a Q&A button, and you can type your questions in there. And there's an upvote system as well. So if somebody else has asked a question that you want answered as well, just hit the thumb button and it kind of ranks the most popular questions, and we'll kind of work our way down from the most popular, just to try and make sure we answer the most pressing questions for you. We will have some polls as well, a couple of questions to see how switched on and engaged you are with NHS hot topics. So please do use the vote system. It's all anonymous as well, so don't worry about your kind of individual answers. It just kind of aggregates the data, and then we'll share that with you as well, so you can see kind of how you did against everybody else. It's just a bit of fun. It's not actually serious. So get involved with that. Okay, without further ado, I guess this is the time to introduce Minnie. Minnie is a fourth-year medical student at Manchester, and you'll be talking to us about NHS hot topics, aren't you?
Yeah, exciting times. Yeah, it should be interesting, hopefully, for you all.
Was kind of NHS hot topics something that came up at your interviews?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's a long time ago now, about 5 years ago since I did it, so I don't remember the exact questions, but yeah, it's something I definitely remember discussing and doing a lot of reading up beforehand. I remember sort of the night before, sort of getting that last minute reading in. So yeah, definitely it's something worth preparing for and knowing your stuff a bit beforehand.
Okay, great. Well, I'll leave it to you, and then I'll be there to kind of help with the polls and things as well. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's try and get this slide moving. Perfect. So yeah, interviews are starting, and I hope if you've done any so far, they've gone well. And so this is like the perfect time to sort of get started and get reading really, and just make sure that you're doing a little bit often, building up to it. You don't want to be just panicking the night before, not knowing anything that's going on. And it comes up a lot as well. So you don't want to be sort of get a question and be completely stumped because you don't know what's going on in the NHS or in healthcare. So definitely worth doing some preparation. Don't go overboard. Don't, let it get in the way of your studies. But article in the evening, something like that would be really helpful. And it's definitely a great way to impress your interviewers as well. If you've done your wider reading and you can come across that you're really passionate about medicine and you found topics that you really enjoy, because they want to know that you're going to study hard, and they want to know that you're going to be interested in studying medicine as well, because it's a tough subject, it's a tough degree. So showing that you're dedicated to it at this early stage is really impressive. So this webinar, I'm going to give you a few topics that that you can read up on. I'll give you sort of the building blocks and the main points, but I think it's really worth you guys doing, going off, using it, and sort of doing your own sort of research as well, because we're all going to have our own opinions on things as well. So building up sort of your own views on certain topics and seeing what sort of side of the coin you fall on, I think that's really important as well. So I'll go over where you can go after this to sort of do that reading, but I'll just start off with having a look at these topics to begin with. So first poll question: does anyone know in which year the NHS was formed or established? Yeah, even if you don't know, have a guess, loads of you vote in, so that's really great. Give it a bit longer. Cool. So yeah, most of you getting that right. You know your stuff. So 1948 is the year that the NHS was started. So this was following on from the Second World War, although the original idea came from before the war, when this report came out from a really big economist who basically proposed this as part of, you know, this welfare state where sort of tax funding would be going to these things to support, you know, the population of the UK following on from the war. And Aneurin Bevan, that's the name that you really want to know. He's basically the main sort of person that campaigned for this, and he was the health minister for the Labour Party from 1946. So he was the big proponent for the NHS. A lot of great quotes as well from him there if you want to go look up those. But basically, there are three key principles for the NHS when it was first started. So I think if you're going to take anything away from this, it's these principles that are really important to know, and, you know, still very important, and, you know, are part of the NHS today. So that it meets the needs of everyone. So no one's left behind, everyone has access, that it be free at the point of delivery. So nowadays there are odd things that you may be charged for, like prescriptions, dentistry, things like that, but majority, 99%, will be free for everyone to access. And then it's based on clinical need and not ability to pay. So no one's going to be left, you know, not being able to afford their surgery or their medication. So that's really, really big part of the NHS, and still today as well. And this is, of course, funded primarily by taxation. So a cut of everyone's salary will go off every month or year, and funding, you know, for this. So kind of everyone coming together and supporting, you know, basically covering everyone's healthcare. So another poll question. We're going to go on to a bit of COVID now, because I feel like that's probably going to come up quite a lot. It's probably the only thing that people are hearing about on the news at the moment. So between the start of the pandemic and September, how many items of PPE have been delivered to health and social care settings? So this is things like aprons, gloves, masks, anything like that. And sorry, PPE, for anyone that doesn't know, is personal protective equipment. So this is basically equipment that you would wear as a healthcare professional to sort of protect yourself from catching not just COVID, they're for, you know, a lot of things. We've worn masks in surgery for however many years, just and gloves and things like that. But obviously it's very prominent at the moment, and with COVID being so sort of infective, it's a very, very big part of you know, what's going on at the moment. So yeah, a lot of you answering. 2.4. Good guess. Well, it's a lot. I think it's 3.4 billion is what the BBC has stated, which is a lot. That's a lot of equipment. So just to go over, so as I was saying, PPE, as we can see this diagram at the top, this is the sort of stuff that healthcare professionals are wearing at the moment, just to stop, well, help prevent them catching coronavirus, especially in settings where there's a high viral load, where there's a lot of the virus going around, say on ICU and stuff. That they're probably more likely to get sort of severe symptoms because they're taking on, you know, so much more of the virus if it's there. So to start off with, at the start of the pandemic, officials thought we would have been prepared. They said that we've got two stockpiles, one ready for a pandemic that's been there for a while, and then one for no deal Brexit as well, because they knew that sort of supply would be maybe altered, or, you know, sort of tweaked from Brexit. So just that was there in case. However, these stockpiles, it wasn't taken into account that these were sort of built and the equipment was made for an influenza outbreak, so the flu type viruses, as opposed to this coronavirus, which is quite a novel virus. It sticks around on surfaces a lot longer than flu, and it's quite a lot bit more infective than the flu. So basically, the equipment that we already had was not suitable and not up to the task. So that was one of the issues. Oh, sorry, I'll go back. And then in February as well, there was basically the guidelines from people like the WHO was basically wear these fluid repellent gowns and FFP3 masks, which are basically these masks that are just almost just squished against your face because you're not letting any air in. However, in March, the guidance changed in the UK just to plastic aprons and surgical masks. So there was a bit of backlash as well from doctors and people in the healthcare community saying that, hold on a minute, the WHO is telling us to wear, almost these industrial level masks and gowns, and the UK and the NHS is telling us to go, with only plastic aprons and surgical masks. So they thought that they were downgrading this PPE guidance to be in line with the equipment that they'd already had. So yeah, there was a bit of backlash there, and that's something worth thinking about, having a read about. Also, there was issues with the supply chain. The people who were basically procuring this equipment for the NHS had no experience, sourcing from overseas. Of course, we've never had to have this much PPE, and manufacturing over here is not going to be able to handle it. So we had to look abroad to bring things in, bring things like masks in, and getting hold of it. They had very little experience, so that was a struggle, which is why we had such a shortage as well. And again, in April, there was a bit of a mistake with 50 million masks had to be scrapped because they just weren't up to standard, and that cost almost £252 million. So there's been quite a lot of sort of mistakes made, and I think underestimating how much we'd need as well. So yeah, PPE has been a bit of an issue, and it's definitely worth having a think about what could have been improved upon, how we could have dealt with the situation better, and maybe write down some points that you could talk about with that. And as well, the NHS staff, because we've been so short supply, I've had to like wash and reuse those plastic gloves at the start of the pandemic, which should have been single use, put them in the bin. So yeah, it's been a bit of a struggle for them. Okay, so on to the vaccine now. Who's the top priority for the COVID-19 vaccination? So yeah, I'm sure you all know that the vaccine sort of started rolling out this week, and they've set the priority list sort of at the end of last week, and it's quite exciting. Yeah, loads of you answering, that's really good.
Great news. It really is amazing news. Some people might watch this on YouTube in kind of 6 months' time and they'll be like, wow, the vaccine's been around for ages. But right now, this week, it's only just been announced, and it honestly does feel amazing. It feels like once we get through January, February, March, we're going to be in a much better position. So
for sure, yeah, it's like a massive step in the right
happy.
direction. Yeah, for sure. It's like the biggest happy news in a long time. So that's great. I think most people have voted. So yeah, exactly right. Residents and care home for older adults and their carers as well. Cool, let's get on to the next slide. So yeah, as we were saying, the UK is rolling out this Pfizer vaccine. Sort of this week, we had the first few patients get hold of this vaccine. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about how the vaccine works, just to start off with. So it's an mRNA vaccine. So I'm sure quite a lot of you done A-level biology and sort of know what mRNA is. So basically it's messenger RNA. So it's almost a half strand of DNA, which then gets translated by cells in your body to make a protein. So the mRNA from the virus is has been used. So this is what codes for the protein on the outside of the virus, because and this is what is packaged up into lipid, that's like a fat. So that sort of encapsulates it and holds it there. And this is injected injected intramuscularly into the patient, and then the body uses that code to manufacture the protein itself. and manufacture that viral antigen, that protein on the outside of the virus, which is then recognized by your own immune system. And then your immune system can also then, produce cells and antibodies to provide an immune response. So say you came into contact with the virus itself, it's got the tools to fight back, and it can recognize the virus. So yeah, that's basically in a nutshell how it works. So 3 modes of delivery, they're doing it in hospitals, vaccination centres. I think there's talk about them using maybe the Nightingale hospitals, things like that, and then the GPs and pharmacies will be handing them out as well. There's been talk of sort of GPs being redeployed to basically start do this mass vaccination program and get as many people vaccinated as possible. So yeah,
and
most
medical
of you
students as well.
Yes.
So you might be roped into helping out with some of the vaccinations.
It's good to actually do something useful. So yeah, most of you are right, care home residents will be vaccinated first. So of course these people are extremely vulnerable, and of course having so many vulnerable people together at once as well in a home, that's it's risky. And of course we've seen cases in the past year of massive outbreaks in care homes. That's where we've had the most sort of really upsetting actually, these massive outbreaks and cases where people who are COVID positive being discharged from hospital into care homes and then spreading it to other people. And that's a whole nother topic in itself. It's just really interesting. And you can think about, what could we have done differently to stop these outbreaks? How could we have dealt with these COVID positive patients that, didn't necessarily need to be in hospital for care, but were also, had the virus and were also infected? What could we have done differently to stop the spread to care homes? And there's a massive push as well with all this misinformation being spread online about the virus. As you see the picture here, pandemic. I think there's been a massive increase in sort of this anti-vaxxer movement, especially on social media. That's also something you can have a think about, is how social media is sort of impacting people's sort of perception of what's going on. And people tend to only see sort of the political side or their viewpoints that they share, and you get sort of dug into a hole of sort of an echo chamber really of one side of the story. So yeah, we're trying to think of ways at the moment to stop things like this sort of spreading, conspiracy theories about Bill Gates and things like that. So it's quite dangerous because you obviously need a certain percentage of the population to be vaccinated for herd immunity and things like that. So it is quite dangerous, all this, misinformation spreading out. And of course, Brexit's on the horizon as well. Boris Johnson's gone out to Brussels to try and get us a deal, but it's going to have a big impact on the NHS. And I think Mark's going to share a link with you to the King's Fund website, which is really, really good. I've sent it's an article about the impact of Brexit on the NHS, and there's also really great articles on there as well about the structure of the NHS, the funding, how that all works. So yeah, some of the points that it brings up there is that we've got a massive staff shortage at the moment in the NHS. There's a lot of vacancies which tend to be filled by people from overseas. I know a lot of nurses have been going out to Spain to try and recruit nurses to come here and work within the NHS to fill those vacancies. So we have a think about Brexit and how that might have an impact on recruiting and filling those vacancies. I know we've got a lot of new medical schools as well. So they're trying to up numbers within the UK, but in the short term, there might be issues with recruitment and things like that. The economic impact, people might be less likely to come to the UK, less likely to want to come and work in the NHS. So that's something worth thinking about as well. and access to medicines as well. We would basically drop from our tier 1 status and be put at the back of the queue for certain medicines and new medicines. So yeah, it's the NHS is a massive powerhouse, and in terms of negotiating and things like that. But you know, will that change with Brexit? We're yet to see. We don't really know yet. But I think with it sort of unfolding at the moment, I think it's really worth keeping an eye on what's happening, and you know, being up to date with that, because it's changing every day. We're constantly getting news about it. And also the trade deal with the US. I mean, that's all been, you know, going on over there with the election. Trump has said in the past that potentially the NHS is on the table with a trade deal, but I think he took that back, and the government have also denied it. But yeah, it's there's been a lot of sort of backlash from that, and people saying, you know, keep off our NHS and hands off. So yeah, it's really interesting, because I mean, everything's so fresh, and it's all, you know, unraveling as we speak, really. So yeah, keep reading. And so this happened a while back, but this is a really interesting case that is constantly brought up in medical school, and something that highlights sort of a lot of issues and problems within the NHS at the moment. So it's Dr. Bawa-Garba, who was working in the Children's Assessment Unit back in 2011. And this was her first shift back after maternity leave, so had been off for, you know, however long. And so in comes a 6-year-old boy with Down syndrome and a heart defect. So he basically had a hole in his heart, which is a really common problem in people with Down syndrome. And he's coming in with all these diarrhea, vomiting, difficulty breathing, like real nasty symptoms that you're thinking, okay, this boy's really, really ill. And like a massive series of errors led to the boy dying from cardiac arrest due to sepsis, which is basically where you get a massive infection and your immune system sort of goes haywire and almost shuts everything off. I mean, like massive organ failure and everything. So I mean, one of the mistakes was mistaken identity. So they stopped doing CPR and resuscitation because they thought that it was a different patient who had a do not actively resuscitate. So they stopped this life-saving treatment for a couple of minutes, thinking it was someone else. And the boy also got some really, really scary blood results, which Dr. Bawa-Garba didn't highlight to her senior. So it's almost that sort of Swiss cheese model, if you know it, where all the holes kind of line up and will lead to sort of a massive issues. So Bawa-Garba was convicted of gross negligence manslaughter and suspended from working. But this caused a massive backlash from within the medical community. So loads of GPs signed a letter in protest saying that no, she shouldn't have been struck off. And there was also fears that sort of portfolio and reflection. So as you know, reflection is so important, and you know, we still do it in medical school, and doctors will do it when they're working until they're retired. They were worried that reflection and things that we'd written would be used against us in court and things like that, just to sue us basically for mistakes. So loads of money was raised within the medical community to sort of mount a challenge against her being sacked. But it really does show sort of this massive stress and pressure, all these mistakes being made because of being understaffed, and a lot of sort of worry about making mistakes. I mean, the doctors really, you've got a lot of responsibility, but you know, when sort of the structure around you is sort of you know, not built for you performing most efficiently, then mistakes are going to be made. And I think you're going to put a lot of people off, you know, making all these legal sanctions for mistakes. So that completely changed the landscape of practice after that, and new measures were put in place to stop doctors basically being sued for anything and everything. And and stop them being sort of punished for any errors that they'd made. So I think that's a really interesting case that's worth, you know, having a little read about and seeing what the impact is on the medical community, because I think it is the case that's had probably one of the biggest impacts on the NHS and, you know, doctors in the past few years. So where can you read about these hot topics and things like that? Because, you know, obviously you're going to go off and down and do your own reading. So British Medical Journal is absolutely great resource. You don't need a membership or anything to access most of it. You get opinion pieces from doctors and really up to date, loads of sections on, so you can read about Brexit and the vaccine and COVID. Really, really useful, and obviously written by doctors. BBC News Health, always really good, always very up to date and quite objective as well. So you're just going to get the facts really and be up to date with that. Newspapers, always great, always keep up to date with newspapers and stuff, but be aware of biases. So certain newspapers are going to have, you know, massive leanings left or right. So it's important obviously to be aware of both sides, and you kind of want one that's going to be really reliable and not going to sort of sway you too far from, you know, sort of opinion wise, if you know what I mean. Yeah, you want sort of both sides of the spectrum. So, and then NHS news as well. This is really good because it sort of takes a dive into sort of the news that's come out and looks into sort of is this trustworthy. So like as I was saying with the newspapers, you can look then on NHS if you found something really interesting and have a look at how was the design of the study. Can we believe, you know, these statistics? So that's a really good website that I found. A very short introduction to series is always really good. This is a bit more sort of the sciencey side of things. So if you're really interested in a certain topic, like I think I've got one on stem cells and schizophrenia. So if there's anything you're particularly interested in, they're always really good. They're really thin as well, so you'll power through them. And then also some topics here that you might want to have a look at. So A&E wait times, not as much as like a topic at the moment because of COVID and it's altered, you know, how A&E has been working, but in the lead up to it, it's definitely been a massive thing. Antibiotic resistance, of course, is always good to know about. Stem cells, it's a growing sort of technology at the moment. Mental health, always important. That's definitely a growing issue within the UK. Big data, sort of knowing who's going to get ill from whether they like dogs or cats on their Google searches. It's kind of crazy, really interesting to read about. Impact of lockdown as well. Of course, like we're saving lives, it's amazing, but there's also like a knock-on impact in the long term as well with, you know, people who maybe have cancer that haven't presented to their GP, that present way later beyond, you know, that time frame where they could have had life-saving treatment, and of course mental health as well, having a big impact on that. And then ethics, always really important. Ethics, consent and confidentiality, there's something that would help you with SJ, the sort of situational judgment stations as well. So yeah, have a look at those, and yeah, hopefully it's given you a bit of a sort of starting place here, and you can go on and yeah, have a good read.
Yeah, I think what I'll put the link for the Brexit articles in the chat, so everybody should have that. Just make sure that you copy and paste that like outside of Zoom, because obviously once we close Zoom down, you'll lose that link. So we've put that in the chat. I'll also put a couple of links, or I'll put a link to our YouTube channel in there as well, because there's some videos we've just put up about medical school interviews, ethics, and how to answer those kind of ethical based questions as well. So I'll put a link to that in there as well. Right, let's have a look at some questions. We've got nearly 550 people here, so if everyone asks one question, we're probably not going to get through them all in the next 20 minutes, but we'll try and get through some of the most popular ones anyway. So just starting at the top, and I'm going to work my way down. What happens if the interviewer asks a question about a topic in the NHS, and it's something that I have no idea about?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think the way that they'll structure it, I don't think they'll ever put in anything that you have absolutely no idea about. Like, it will be something that has come up. But if not, yeah, I just
I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to be a surprise to
No.
It's they're going to pick topics that are in the news all the time, on BBC Health all the time, and you should have an awareness of these anyway. So they're not going to pick something completely random that you just never have heard of before. That's unlikely to happen. But if you do your reading on BBC News and the NHS News and some of those other things that we spoke about before, you're going to have a pretty good idea about what's coming up.
Yeah, for sure. And they want to see how you handle that pressure as well. So just have a good crack at it as well. And I'm sure you'll be able to come up with sort of something, because you'll have vaguely heard of it for sure. And, coming up with your own thoughts and things like that, they'll be really impressed. So I think just don't panic when something like that happens.
Yeah, just have a strategy and maybe, try and be honest as well.
Yeah.
Ask them if there's any more information they can give you. Maybe just try and weigh up both sides theoretically as well. If you genuinely have no idea, but you could form some kind of, sides and talk about those sides, and that might be an option as well. Yeah, good question to start with, but, read all those news articles that we're talking about and you should be pretty safe. Right, let's have a look at the next one down. Could you give us an example answer to a question? What challenges do doctors face, and explain some of the issues / underlying healthcare challenges?
Oh, so yeah, quite broad. I think I suppose one of them, the job itself, very stressful. You've got a lot of patients to look after, and as I was saying, the NHS is quite understaffed at the moment, so you're looking after a lot more patients than you would be otherwise. So sort of juggling priorities and yeah, I think that's really important as well, like prioritizing and sort of critically thinking about who do I need to see first and who needs that treatment first, and being able to sort of analyze the situation that's going on and make sound decisions that way. Ethically as well, you've got big decisions to make in terms of sort of which treatment do you go for? Do you say the surgery's got 50% chance of survival? What do you tell the parents? How do you confront that? Things like that. You've also got just issues with patients as well. You're going to come across people that might be really depressed or undergoing sort of being victims of abuse. Sort of they're really difficult sort of difficult consultations to handle and stuff, and I think it's a stress on yourself as well as a doctor. It's a lot to sort of carry on your shoulders that you're looking after these people, and as well, yeah, like the funding of the NHS, that you're not going to be able to afford life-saving drugs for everyone. I think it's worth having a read into things like monoclonal antibodies. They're really expensive treatment that are potentially like life-changing in things like cystic fibrosis, but only certain people are allowed them because they're so expensive. So things like that. I think just categorize them, and yeah, and then that's sort of what you're coming across as.
Okay, a question here from Lewis. How long would you generally say these questions should be answered for? So what's a typical length answer?
I suppose it depends on the style of interview as well, whether it's MMI or sort of a panel interview. I feel like panel interview, you'll probably have a lot more time to discuss it. I wouldn't say it's a huge amount. They're not expecting you to sort of reel off facts and figures, and I think they just want to see that you're aware of what's going on and you've done your reading, and that you can sort of use the reading that you've done to form an opinion that's that you can back up as well. So in terms of length of time, I wouldn't say that you would be talking for 5 minutes straight, but just being able to sort of summarize what you've read. Some people say this, some people say that. This is what I think is a good way to structure it, but couldn't give you a figure like you'd be speaking for a minute and a half. So but that's sort of generally how I would structure it if it was me.
Okay, thank you. It's a good question. Are there any positives for the NHS on the back of Brexit?
Yeah, so I was really trying to find some. I suppose I've got my own. So I was trying to look on Daily Mail and things like that, and I suppose it depends on the deal we get as well. I suppose the original point put forward by Leave was that we'd have the money that we were going to send to the EU to spend on the NHS. So, but that's we're waiting whether that would actually happen. So, I struggled, but I think having a good look and a wide range of sources, you probably could find something, but.
I think that the media makes it out to be very negative at the moment. So you almost need to, I think if I was asked a question around that, I would probably look at, what's Brexit being done for? And one of the arguments is that it would lead to kind of greater prosperity for the country in general by being able to have trade deals with the rest of the world. So one of the arguments could be that from this greater prosperity, more jobs will be created, more taxes will be raised, which means there's more funding to go into the NHS to improve it. That might be one way to look at Brexit as a positive. And that just gives you a bit of an extra balance. So if kind of the Brexit and the NHS comes up, you do have that balance between, there's a lot of negatives with Brexit, but as a balanced argument, let's look at, this is an option and the prosperity and the potential funding for the NHS in the future. Yeah, tricky question though. A lot of the media is very, very negative about it at the moment. Cool. So I'm just going to kind of scroll down to try and get some of the questions to try and answer as many as possible. What's the best way to prepare for your interview?
I'd say just practice. So it sounds so bad, but I think the more you practice talking out loud and trying to get your point across in a well-structured way, that's really important. Recording yourself, listening to it back. How do you sound? How could you improve on that? Practicing with friends and family. Get them to, give them a list of questions that they can ask you, and just practice saying it out loud. And then obviously doing all this reading as well, and just making sure you're up to date with everything, and having a look at where you're interviewing, what style of interview is it, and have they given you any tips or hints on what stations are going to come up, and going from there really, and just practicing sort of any sort of ethics stations that they hint that they might give you, things like that.
Yeah, really good answer. So another question here is, what kind of depth of knowledge would you need around these NHS hot topics?
I don't think, unless you're really passionate, unless it's something that really interests you, that you need to go into that much depth really. But it's worth definitely being aware of what's going on. So things like PPE, the vaccine. Could you give an answer, a minute answer about those things, if it came up? And I suppose it's just what level of knowledge will make you feel comfortable. I'm someone that if I'm going to talk about something, I want to know sort of a lot about it so that I'm ready to talk about it. So I'd be doing a lot of reading, but some people just like to sort of have a broad sort of awareness of everything. And so I think it's however much you're interested in most of all, but yeah, just have an awareness of what's going on on like the BBC Health homepage.
And another question here is, how much will they expect you to know about the structure of the NHS?
I suppose maybe not the structure of the NHS, but I mean maybe they would. But I think it's knowing people's roles as well. I think is really important within the NHS. So what do doctors do? What do the nurses do? Healthcare assistants, how do they all sort of work together? I think that's probably more important than sort of knowing who funds who and which organisations, you know, are in charge. But as I was saying before, the King's Fund is really, really good resource for that. They did a really good video on sort of how the NHS is structured. So if that's something you want to know about, then like, yeah, I think that's, you know, good to read up on. But I just think, you know, knowing how all the staff and people like that, what their roles are, that's really important as well.
And there's quite a lot of questions in here just asking, do you think they will ask about COVID? I think it is the hot topic at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if hot topics were to come up, I think it would be. I think it's quite easy for them to ask. People will definitely have an awareness of it. They might, you know, it's worth sort of having a think. I think lockdown will be a really, really easy topic for them to ask about, because there's quite a lot of positives and negatives to it. So having an opinion on that would be really good. But yeah, I'd say know about it and be ready, because I think the likelihood is that, you know, they probably could ask about it.
Kind of tricky question here. If they raise the situation around kind of nurses' pay, how would you kind of approach that question? Or doctors' pay, just pay in general, I guess.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a really difficult one, because obviously it hasn't really, you know, gone up in the past few years, and we're in a very difficult situation economically. So I think weighing up that, like, is it how important is it that we give sort of these you know, really important people like nurses are, you know, amazing, they're the building blocks of the NHS, but weigh that up with, you know, can we afford it as well. The clap for carers as well was that, you know, we did that every night for every Thursday, and but yeah, the nurses still haven't got a pay rise. So I think thinking about that as well. But yeah, weigh up the pros and cons, because I think that, yeah, with COVID, it was definitely a trickier situation than it was before.
Okay, I think we've probably got time for maybe a couple more questions. I think this is quite a good question here as well. How do you prove that you have the following qualities? And then there's a big list, so like empathy, team working, respect, problem solving, motivation. I guess there's a similar structure to answering all of those qualities in a way.
Yeah, so with MMIs and things like that, they will have stations to test you on probably each of those. And oh, I don't know where the list has gone. But I think having maybe reading your personal statement as well, and picking out things that you've obviously done in your work experience, and saying, okay, this shows this quality, and obviously the big word is reflection as well. How can you reflect on that, you know, sort of making you, you know, a good problem solver. And as well, you've got things like the role play stations, making sure that you're empathizing with the actor. I'm not sure how, you know, much they'll do of that now with Zoom and things like that, but they might have, you know, someone on Zoom that you have to interact with, and just, you know, asking them questions, being as empathetic as possible. What do they think? How are they feeling? Asking them, and then the problem solving, things like that, just thinking out loud, structuring answers as well in your head. But yeah, they'll be testing you and they'll give you opportunities to demonstrate those skills for sure, because I think that's what they're looking for. So they want to see, you know, how you handle it.
Right, I'm just going to see if I can find kind of like one final question to end on. Are there any kind of good podcasts or books that you would recommend? I think that's a good one to finish on, something that people can kind of take away and go away and read about and learn about these kind of things.
Yeah, for sure. If you're looking for something quite funny, that kind of gives you quite nice perspective on life within the NHS, the Adam Kay books are really good. So This Is Going to Hurt and Twas the Night Shift Before Christmas. They're quite interesting books to read. It was quite a sort of honest depiction of life as a doctor. Atul Gawande, he's a great author as well. Yeah, trying to think. Sorry, what was the rest of the question? Books to read.
Any podcasts as well?
Podcasts, that was it. There's I can't remember what it's called, but the BMJ runs a sort of studenty podcast, which is really good, and they go over sort of what's going on within the NHS. They were doing one that was quite amusing the other night on sort of stereotypes within each specialty, things like that. And it's quite a good level for you guys, that it's not super duper, because a lot of them are very much sort of around the science and learning, but that one's quite, you know, nice level for you guys. So I can try and find that for you, and then share that with you guys later.
Okay, cool. Yeah, if you want to, you can send that link to me and I'll put it in the email along with the recording and the slides if you want. Yeah, so what we'll do, I think someone's put it in the chat as well. Is it called Sharp Scratch?
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Lewis, for that one. But yeah, I'll put a link in the actual email as well, because what we'll do is we'll send these slides, we'll send a recording of this, and we'll upload it to our YouTube. So we'll put all of that in that email as well. And just before everybody leaves as well, I'll put the YouTube link in the chat as well, so everyone can kind of copy that. Because we've got lots of videos about preparing for interviews, about ethics, about hot topics and things as well. So I'll put that in the chat, all panelists and attendees. Yeah, cool. So copy that one, because obviously once we close the Zoom down, that link will disappear, and we'll put that again in the emails. Cool, so I'll just give everybody a second to copy that. But yeah, I think that's about it. I think we're just short of 1 hour, which is perfect timing. So yeah, thank you very much, Minnie, for coming to talk to us about hot topics. We really appreciate your kind of insights as well. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and good luck with your interviews, everyone. I'm sure you'll do great.
All right, thank you very much, guys. You're free to go. We'll hang around for a minute, but yeah, we'll see you on some more webinars in the future.